Welcome back to Morning Express. Time now for our State of the Nation discussion. And this morning, we'll be talking matters, party realignments that have recently been witnessed as of yesterday and as of last month as well, and what these mean in the run-up to the August 8th general election. We'll also be speaking matters drought. Of course, the emerging drought situation continues to escalate as more and more Kenyans are victims of the ravaging drought situation. And in studio with us for this conversation, political commentator Bigambo. Thank you so much for joining us in studio.
Thank you.
And we also have nominated a Member of Parliament in Irungu, Member of Parliament for Kiharu, Irungu Kangata. Many thanks for joining us in studio.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen. So let's begin with the political scene and the party realignments, of course. And yesterday saw former TNA Secretary General Onyango Olo announce his move to ODM from the Jubilee Party, something that has spewed a lot of controversy in the political scene. But Javas, let's begin with the fact that Onyango Olo is now threatening to bring secrets with him from the Jubilee camp that just may help Raila Odinga win the election.
Well, it is interesting, of course, that he has made such a shift. And the other thing is that it is the character of politicians in this country. It has now been made manifest that they will always conveniently switch sides for their political survival. And you know very well that such has happened even in the past, and our history has documented that, which is all right. However, what is now even more baffling now is the sentiments by the former TNA Secretary General that he's brought with him to the other side with an avalanche of secrets that he intends to use to aid the opposition leader to gain power and then to send the incumbent president to the side of the opposition so that they can switch positions. Now, while that is interesting because it makes for very good political, very good sound bites. However, it can come also at a cost, because the cost itself, yes, may be political. The other cost as well may have other, extra political implications.
Right.
Now, you see, the challenge here is that when the former TNA Secretary General says that he's come with secrets, and if he opens that can of worms to his new abode, the challenge here will be that he risks failing to earn the trust also of his new residents, such that they will fear that if he gets access to the secrets within, anytime he'll make a shift, he'll make a shift again with all those secrets and expose them to the detriment of his former dwelling.
Right.
And we are going to see very interesting times. However, now, a few things I may pick from the sentiments of the former TNA Secretary General. One, that yes, he's come with secrets. Two, the sensational claim that the elections were not won by the Jubilee in 2013. And we know very well that, of course, Onyango Olo is a lawyer. And then again, of course, we know that the Supreme Court made a ruling.
And he did play a very crucial role in yes. President Kenyatta's campaign in 2013.
And affirming the victory of Jubilee, affirming that victory. And of course, history too has it in documentation that he sat the place I'm seated right now and of course spoke eloquently to how Jubilee won power and in fact chastised the opposition for making any claim to the contrary. So this in the end may be possibly a question of putting his own tail or foot in the mouth.
Right, and before we speak to you, Honorable Kangata, let's listen to former Secretary General, TNA Secretary General Onyango Olo while announcing his defection yesterday.
And I do sympathize with my brother. Having lost 3 times, he would rather get off the stage in a more respectable way than suffer a 4th defeat, which I can promise you as the Secretary General of this party, I'm preparing to hand him.
Mimi nilikubaliana na rais na nikasema nitatii kidole, nitaweka kidole na kuhakikisha ya kwamba Wakenya wameletwa pamoja na kuhakikisha ya kwamba tumeungana kama chama na kama Wakenya. Little did I know, fellow Kenyans, together with the 11 other parties, that we were being led into a very vile and vicious political conmanship. The end result has been that JAP is in the office, TNA is dead, TIP is dead, GNU is dead, UDM is dead, and all those other parties.
All right, Onyango Law there announcing his defection to ODM and as well as raising his frustrations with the Jubilee Alliance. And I speak to you, Honorable Kangata. I mean, listening to what he's saying, JAP is in office, TNA is dead, UDF is dead, and he points to a lot of frustrations in Jubilee Alliance that many people are being sidelined. Is this a situation on the ground?
Not at all. I do not think that a party exists because of its officials. Of course, officials of every party which dissolved, I'm sure they are not happy. They may have lost sparks, they may have lost influence, and some of them may have felt jilted by that merger. But we all know in Kenya politics do not depend on parties per se. It is the individuals. So if you cling to that old idea that that party has any impact without Uhuru Kenyatta, or even URP has any impact without a person called William Ruto, you are not a political realist.
Right.
To me, his reaction is like, you recall there was a time Mr. Ruto wanted to defect to a party called UDM, and the proprietors of that party refused him to join, and then he formed URP. That party died. So it's the same effect. When those two principals decided to merge their parties, the officials who hung to the idea that those parties ought not to have merged, those officials are withering away. And to me, this defection is just a manifestation of that withering away of people who still cling to that old idea. To me, bottom line is that of course, if you come from the Luo Nyanza region, if you are not with Raila Odinga, of course, you are not into real politics per se.
Right.
Unless you want to be appointed by the government of Uhuru Kenyatta. The same also applies with any person who comes from our region. If you are not following or towing the line of Uhuru Kenyatta, you're not in politics per se.
Right.
Unless, of course, maybe you're angling for a position, let's say, of a nominated MC or a nominated member of parliament or a nominated senator.
And I understand those sentiments, but you know, many analysts like Bigambo would say, many of them say that political parties mainly are just special purpose vehicles for politicians to get to power. But before we get to this conversation, let's listen to Ferdinand Waititu's reaction to the announcement that Onyango Law has moved to ODM.
Imeonekana yeye alikuwa msaliti. Yeye alikuwa anaangalia vile tunaendelea, usiku anapeana maneno pande hiyo. Kwa hivyo sisi tumefurahi vile amerudi huko ODM. Wacha aendeshe kazi yake huko mchana kuliko awe na sisi, na usiku yeye anapiga simu huku kuelezana vile TNA inaenda.
All right, so that's Ferdinand Waititu. So referring to Onyango Law there as a traitor, but Bigambo, you brought up an interesting issue that politicians usually make these movements and these realignments towards, towards the elections for their own special purpose. But Onyango Law said he was sidelined, and secondly, he says he cannot allow his people to be part of a political outfit that does not have the interests of Kenyans at heart with regard to, corruption. But this is a man who has been President Uhuru Kenyatta's appointment for the past more than 4 years, and just 6 months to the elections, he decides, you know what, I'm tired of all this. Let me move to ODM. I mean, is this really for the greater good?
Well, as to the issue of being sidelined, I responded to the affirmative. One, yes, after, you remember he was appointed to the board, as a chair, and then when his term expired last year, it was not renewed. Neither was he given any other, appointment. Secondly, of course, with all these mergers and with the natural death of TNA and with the existence now of Jubilee Party, all former officials have found themselves, dangling precariously, trying to position themselves or see where they would fit. Now, of course, the aspect of betrayal here to him as a political mind would be that having been a central cog within the wheel of TNA, with this new formation, he has no place. And that itself made him feel like he's left in the cold. And to any person with a political mind and a political future, they would wonder what the future spells for them. And now maybe perhaps having kept on lingering for a while, and then no promise having come forth or even a central role, realize that, for instance, somebody like former Arieda Member of Parliament, Raphael Tuju, has been lifted from the ashes and given a significant political role within the Jubilee's political strategy for 2017 re-election for Uhuru Kenyatta. And Onyango Law being left out. So here, Onyango Law easily felt that his political significance or political premium within the government was going down, was withering. And because when you look at the elevation of former Arieda MP and a couple of other individuals, then he felt that maybe that's the thanks being extended to him for having been within that party and having served it as he did. And then the issue of the people being, his people being left out in the cold. Of course, if I were to look at it, with my political scalpel and try to cut it, then one would wonder, which is this constituency then that he demands, he commands, and who are these people that he owns? Now, of course, he has got great influence. Of course, he has got influence. That's why even he played the role that he did. And that's why even his move to ODM or to the opposition now is causing some jitters and some kind of excitement. But he may want to move very carefully and also be very careful about his sentiments because in the end, they may come after him, those sentiments. And it may impel him to be a bit humble with them because the cost may be a bit higher.
All right. And Honorable Kangata, I mean, this isn't the first realignment, movement of this kind of scene. Onyango Law says several more Jubilee members to follow him as he decamped to the opposition, but several members have also decamped from the opposition to the Jubilee party. How are these realignments likely to shape the political scene as we run up to the election?
Let me first say, this guy does not have any political impact at all. I disagree with my colleague who appears to give him a lot of political premium. First, he's not an elected leader. You cannot say you have any political significance. If at all, you cannot marshal people to vote for you. So, in my own assessment, he's a mere technocrat who does not have any army following him at all. And number two, he comes across a person who is not very strategic. Compare him with Sakaja. They were like twins, political twins, when they were forming TNA and running the affairs of TNA. I mean,
there are allegations that Sakaja himself is a bit disgruntled. We were to hear from him, but he didn't make it here today. But there are allegations that he too may follow and decamp from Jubilee.
Fine, if at all that happens, again, he does not have political clout because one is not elected. We can only know your political prowess by your ability to bring people to support you. So that when you move, one can make some presumption. You're not only moving alone, you're moving with your supporters. So to me, to the extent that both of them, they have never been elected in any political position, even if they were to defect, Jubilee will not feel the pinch at all. But however, for Sakaja, it's a little bit tricky in the sense that he appears to be quite a wise man. Because when they were nominating guys into parliament, he was wise enough to include his name there. So this guy appeared to have been memorized by the power he was enjoying then to have forgotten to include his name into the parliament. So to me, to the extent Sakaja did that, Sakaja comes across as a more wiser politician compared to Olo. As to answer your question, again, it depends the kind of defections you're talking about. Defections by such characters, nothing.
What about the threats by Onyango Law that he has these secrets with regard to how the election was rigged in 2013, secrets that he says he will share with the Jubilee, with the opposition?
Of course.
Is he in a position to have these secrets?
No, there's no way, because one, Jubilee won that election in a free and fair manner. That matter was vindicated and argued before the Supreme Court and is now settled law. And number two, as to whether he's going to help Mr. Raila Odinga win, I doubt, because the Raila Odinga arithmetic is about how he's able to cobble a winning team. And we all know, as a matter of fact, Mr. Olo is from Nyanza, And we all know Nyanza is solidly behind Raila Odinga.
Right.
So he has only come with his only one vote, but he has not brought even allocation or even award. So as to other realignments, it depends who is defecting. If, for instance, Kalonzo was to come to our side, that would be a major political shakeup.
Right.
Because the presumption would be he's coming with the members of his community to our region. If, for instance, God forbid, let's say Mr. William Ruto was to go the other side, it goes without saying he's going with the entire community. But let's say if me, for instance, I was to defect, I have no political impact, I'm just a member of parliament.
Right.
There's no way the people of Kiharu can defect to the opposition. So it depends who is defecting. I'm an MCA defecting, nothing. A member of parliament defecting, maybe. But maybe I would give that political significance, let's say 10 or 20%. A huge politician, let's say like like Mudavadi defecting, that's a major score. But now Olo defecting, zero.
I mean, and
No,
you know, we thought this was a party that was inclusive, inclusive for all. But let's address these frustrations that Onyango Law and a section of other Jubilee members of parliament seem to be bringing out in terms of disgruntlement when it comes to contention with the party interim officials. Is that actually happening within the Jubilee party?
Well, it goes without saying that not everyone could be accommodated into the new party. So I would foresee those members or those officials who belong to the previous parties who failed to secure seats in the new political outfit, they may have felt unhappy. But they need also to understand their interest, particularly their community interest, have been well taken care of when you look at the ethnic mix of the new party. And therefore, to me, like if I was to ask myself, Mr. Tuju is a competent and an old politician who is adequately representing that side of political divide, that region. So to me, I don't see any discrimination apart from personal interest of Mr. Olong. Right. And again, I would imagine he wants to vie for a political seat. I think he has done the right move. Right. Without him joining ODM, he couldn't win a political seat in that region.
Let's hear from you, Bigambo, on the same.
You see, when you look at the political weight of Onyango Law and the political weight of former Red MP, you see, there isn't, if it's a question of getting his argument that Onyango Law does not have much significance, then of course, politically, it's difficult to argue about the political significance of Honorable Tuju. Right. However, you see, if the milk of history is something, or the teats of history are the ones that we need to circle this morning, then memory would take us to the times of, James Orengo, to the times of Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. You remember earlier when they were the political nemesis of Raila Odinga, they were on the other side. And when things became so thick that their survival was in peril, they had to go back, because they hail from Nyanza. They had to go back and join the doyen of presently opposition politics, Raila Odinga. Now, if through such lenses we have to look at the political life and possible future of Onyango Law, then you would say, one, that his allegiance to the politics of the opposition, and especially now Raila Odinga, will guarantee him his political future and survival. Right. And of course, it is nearly predictable that he's going to run for political office. And that is expected. And that, of course, having moved at such a time, in such a sensational way, it may earn him a parliamentary seat. And of course, that's likely to be seen. Right. However, of course, I think moving forward, with the frameworks that we have today, with the pieces of legislation, with the kind of policies we've tried to embrace, of course, next week, I think, or in the next few weeks, it's expected that Parliament will try to amend the law to allow for the shifting of politicians from party to party, looking at the nomination that is now just beckoning. But I think one thing we need to ask ourselves, to what extent should Kenyans, ordinary Kenyans, look with excitement at politicians who keep on shifting from one territory to the other territory merely for their political survival? Right. Because in the end, whose interests do they serve? as we may learn from the politics and the writings of other people like Machiavelli, etc., then you realize that politicians will always make shifts for their own political survival and individual interests, not for the interest of the people. So somebody may say, yes, we are moving this so that our people can, but actually it's for their own political survival.
Right.
And that is expected.
And what do these realignments mean now, especially in the wake of these alliances, the Jubilee Alliance and NASA?
Well, we are living in very interesting times right now, especially just on the eve of elections, because they are a few months away. And if we are looking at these as realignments, then we haven't seen it yet. The next few months are going to see major shakeups, major alignments. President Kenyatta has just disbanded his campaign machinery that he had put in place for purposes of making sure that he serves and he considers various interests. Other politicians, going by where they see their and how they see their possible survival going to the general election, on the side of government, they are going to realign themselves for purposes of allegiance, those on the side of the opposition. And we are going to see a major shift. And that kind of shift is going to make volatile the political or raise the political temperatures.
Right.
And that kind of excitement, we know very well, is that which also helps to build the tempo moving into the election. And this means, of course, that as it is in every political or election year, that each major politician, for example, here now, the main competitors in this election, President Kenyatta and possibly Raila Odinga, are going to marshal whatever support they can, do that which they can to make sure that each flexes their political muscles in the hope of winning President Kenyatta to win re-election, and for the side of our opposition, possibly Raila Odinga, to see if he can wrestle that seat of power from the arms of Uhuru Kenyatta.
Right. And of course, after Onyango Olo announced his defection yesterday, he did join opposition leader Raila Odinga in a major rally. And in that rally, we saw a change of heart, so to speak, from the opposition, with Raila Odinga saying that, it's all right if Jubilee want to go with the manual backup system, that they will agree to it. But what they will not have is rigged elections, and that there will be strong consequences for that. Honorable Kangata, this is something that has been contentious for a while, the electronic versus manual, the backup system, and now the opposition seems to have a change of heart. How are you receiving this?
For the benefit of Kenyans who have been consuming information from politicians, we need to clarify that we do not provide for a manual system at all. The law that we changed has nothing to do with the manual system. It says that IEBC shall provide what we call a complementary system. And that's so meaning that complementary system may as well be digital or even computer-based.
Right. And I mean, don't you think it's an issue that as of now, Kenyans still say manual system because there is no communication from Jubilee or IBC on what this complementary system really entails?
Again, there's also another thing that we added. In fact, it is me who proposed, which was captured in that law. It says IBC must disclose that system within a certain time frame, which that time frame is yet to lapse. So the idea is it will be published, and anyone who has, let's say, an issue with that proposed complementary system can as well revert to court to challenge it. And because there were some principles also which were captured in the law, that those principles say that so-called complementary system has to be open, has to be verifiable, has to be objective and fair. So if that new proposed system does not adhere to those set criteria, one can always go to court and challenge them. Be that as it may, there was an explanation which IBC told us. And that explanation is captured in our Hansard, meaning I would imagine that is what IBC intends to do. And that system is, you see, in a voting system, there are 3 stages. There's what we call voter identification, there is the actual voting, and there is what we call transmission of results. Now, in voter identification, that is where the main problem comes in the sense that you may have been registered using your finger features, your fingerprints, but when you come to vote, there has been a change in your features. So therefore, they revert to what they call, they key in your ID. Let's say you come and you present your ID, they key in your ID into that system, your photo comes in, and then they do a facial identity comparison. So that new so-called system is the one they are referring to as complementary.
Right.
So it is nothing new. It is something they have been doing. It's only that after the new laws were amended, those people who did that work forgot to provide for an emergency system where they can use that key-in system to identify a voter.
Right.
So there is nothing as to an idea to rig elections. As to the issue of voting, that one is settled. Voting is always manual. I think we don't intend in the foreseeable future to use computer to vote. But as to transmission, again, that explanation was quite objective, that we have so many regions in Kenya where we don't have 3G or 4G network coverage, which is required for a digitalized transmission of results. And therefore, what will happen is they are going to transmit using maybe satellite, for instance. They may also consider maybe manual transmission of results. So the point is, Mr. Raila Odinga knows the arguments in support of this new law. He knew, in fact, I can tell you, I was in that committee, the so-called Justice and Legal Committee. I'm a member of that committee, and two representatives from his party, they told us in clear terms that they feel they have been convinced by IBC that that new amendment makes a lot of sense. However, because of political dynamics, they need to go back and explain to their leader that there's nothing to fear out of this. So maybe there is every likelihood Raila Odinga has now seen the rationale of that new law, and that is giving him comfort.
Right,
Alternatively, and maybe finally, this new guy who has been made chairman did publicly state that prior to his appointment, he was an ODM member. And in fact, those of us who belong to Jubilee side were quite jittery by that disclosure. But anyway, we were told, no, fine. Notwithstanding, this guy, originally his political leanings were in ODM. He is a Kenyan, deserving to be considered for that position. Maybe that's also is giving him some. We'll be speaking
about that appointment of Wafula Chebukati in just a bit. But let's now listen into opposition leader Raila Odinga speaking in Busia yesterday about the electoral system.
Sisi tumetafuta mbinu ya kuzuia hiyo wizi. Kuanzia leo, nyinyi mchukue kura, siku ya kupiga, siku saa ya kuhesabu, saa ya kutangaza. Hayo yote tutaangalia. Nyinyi yenu ni kupiga na kukaa hapo kwa kituo. Lakini ikipiga kule juu, waachie sisi. Mara hii hakuna kuibiwa. Hawataiba. Hawataiba, tutaona nao mundugu. 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 Tutazuia manake mjinga amerevuka.
I just thought, let's check. Since I know my number offhand, I was able to give the number of my...
All right, that is opposition leader Raila Odinga. They're giving his sentiments on the electoral system and saying that they will not accept any rigging of votes for the 8th general election. And Bigambo, like I mentioned, it seems to be a change of heart by the opposition. But how would you describe this move?
Well, first, we had the August House debate the amendments and then pass the bill, which was assented to by the president, which is now law. And we know very well that it's the place of parliament to do that. And such law, if it's progressive, if it makes sense, I think it behooves all of us, including the leader of opposition, to find sense in the wisdom of such law, and the place that law, or the role that law is supposed to play. However, I think, in the progressive democracy that our country is, it may not be useful now or any other time to go into election with either party or either side issuing threats. So going to the comment you made earlier as to whether there will be consequences, that's remarks attributed to the opposition leader. I think the question of consequences, if it's open-ended like that, itself is a scary thing to imagine, going by the kind of thing we witnessed in this country in 07 and 08 post-election violence. So I think I would appeal, say, to all leaders, including the leader of opposition, that they need to be very keen on their remarks, that they may not cause apprehension as we go into election. And the question of consequences should be consequences or measures or interventions that can be embraced, which are within the frameworks of law that are there. So that, because already in an election year such as this, and even at the, from this period moving forward, you realize that most Kenyans and even businesses are fearing to expend so much because of fears about elections and even thereafter. So I think for the sake of our economy, for the sake of cohesiveness of our nation, for the sake of our national unity, and how strategic we are even in this region, in the continent, that our leaders are keen on that. Now, the change of heart itself, and as Honorable Kangata has indicated that, yes, the opposition was represented in the committee. Yes, they deliberated on those issues and were agreeable to those changes. It is proper and it's fitting then that those who are sent to represent the opposition and having been agreeable to the deliberations therein, found it proper to say, share with their party, and now their party leader sees that actually there is really nothing to fear with all these changes. And in any case, we know very well that this is not the end of it. Even possibly before the 2022 elections, we're likely to see even a change in frameworks, policies, and legislation. And that's expected with the kind of politics that we play here. So it is welcome relief that the opposition does not negate wholly the changes in law, the way Parliament, the National Assembly and the Senate debated and passed and was assented to by the President. And I think also we need to play politics that holds the nation together. And moving forward, I think with the statements made by the Honorable Raila Odinga, I think the stage is set for conducting a proper election, confident that they will be credible. And we've seen even him speak to the people of Busia that let them play their part of voting, and the issue of transmission of results, let it be left to
whoever is responsible.
Whoever is responsible. And I'm also sure that the opposition is very confident in the appointment of Chebukati as the IBC chair. Ours as a people is the hope that the new officials, the new commissioners will work, yes, with the Secretariat to make sure that they deliver, they hand Kenyans a very credible election. And whichever way the results go, that credibility should should lead either side to agree how things are.
Of course,
and
yes.
I think also as Kenyans, 2007
as our background. But before you continue, just a minute, let's take a phone call from Margaret Mboga, who is calling us from Sabatia. Margaret, many thanks for calling in. What's your comment or question this morning?
Habari yako?
Mzuri sana Margaret, endelea.
Habari Kangata na Javas.
Salama sana.
Mimi naongeanga Kiswahili kwa sababu mimi sikuenda shule.
Tafadhali endelea.
Lakini mimi ninasoma Kenya namna zinaendelea. Mambo na kuhusu Olo. Mimi nashangaa na Olo, hata vile niliangalia sikumaliza yeye. Olo wakati alitoa uji ya Raila Kurofa akasema ana ufisadi, alichukua shamba ya huko ya university ya Odinga. Sasa saa hii ametoka TNA, ndio huya yuko kodi, anaongea maneno ya TNA. Sasa mimi nashindwa na huyo Olo Nyango. Olo Nyango ni mtu wa aina gani? Wewe ukitoka mahali hata ukitoka kwa bwana, wacha hiyo mambo ya huko. Wewe enda hata yako mapya, tafuta bwana mpya umtembeleze uingie huko. Sasa mimi nataka nikuambie. Mimi nilianza kukufuata kutoka kitambo Irungu Kangata, wacha nikuambie. Wenye unaona saa hii wanang'ang'ania uongozi, hawajali maslahi ya mwananchi wa chini, wa katikati, wa chini hapa. Wanataka madaraka yao kuchafuana majina ili huyu aongoze, ili huyu apate uongozi. Na hiyo maneno ndio sisi wa Kenya tunafanya nini? Tunakataa. Saa hii tunalazimishwa kuchukua kura. Wewe tangu lini ukalazimisha muajiri yako achukue kura ya kuajiri? Najua nikichukua na nikose kupiga utanipeleka wapi? Mara unasema ati nisipochukua kura hakuna usaidizi nitapata. Na tunapata usaidizi. Tunahangaika tu, tunapiga kura tangu kutoka hapo mpaka hapa na tukihangaika. Kusema ukweli kabisa, mbele ya Mwenyezi Mungu, Uhuru Kenyatta anastahili kurudi katika kiti cha kuongoza Kenya. Ni upinzani wana mambo mengi, hata wameshindwa kuchagua presidential candidate. Sasa saa hizi tunajua farasi ni wawili, Raila na Kenyatta. Mambo ingine ya NASA na NASA, tuachane na hiyo. Asante sana, lakini
Margaret Mboga, asante sana kwa kutupigia kutoka Sabatia. And Honorable Kangata, let's have you, before we wind up, we don't have much time, let's have you address those concerns by Margaret. She's complaining about leaders who don't have the interests of the citizens at heart. It's something we've talked about. But as a member of parliament, you yourself, very interesting, have been described by many Kenyans as one of the most humble and poorest politicians that are there, because you do not have this display of might, and many say that you actually have the interests of Kenyans at heart. So how would you address those comments by Margaret?
Let me state that as to her description of Mr. Olo, to me I think it is an apt description, in the sense that this idea of defecting, today you're supporting this side, tomorrow you defect, it shows you are not a strong politician who stick on issues. To me, I have been in politics for quite a while. I have seen how people change allegiances. And I also know that these people who have that tendency of being disloyal, what activates them more often than not is usually selfish goals. And therefore, I would pray, even if he goes to Raila's camp, Mr. Raila Odinga should not embrace him. As to her final conclusion that Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta needs to be re-elected, I support her 100%. I think Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta has done a good job. And Kenyans, by the way, needs to remember one thing. Uhuru Kenyatta has not been the president of this country for 5 years, no. Uhuru Kenyatta is the only president who is going to serve for a period that is less 5 years. That is as per the law. You must recall that he became the president in March 2013.
Right.
We are now going back into an election in 2017, whereas ideally for him to reach 5 years, we could be doing elections in 2018. So meaning he has achieved that which he has achieved within only a period of only 4 years.
Right.
You'd
and one
imagine,
more year would have made a difference.
No, so therefore, I'm arguing, if at all he has been able to achieve all that within such a short period, what if we give him a more enhanced mandate of 5 years from 2017 to 2022? He is going to perform wonders.
All right. Unfortunately, Javas, we don't have time for your last word, but many thanks, gentlemen, for joining us in the studio. Irungu Kangata, Member of Parliament, Kiharu, as well as political commentator Javas Bigambo, on our State of the Nation discussion as we speak political realignments in the run-up to the August 8th general election. And that brings us to a close here on State of the Nation. We take a short break here on Morning Express. For those on our KTN Home channel, Life and Style is up next. But for those on KTN News, we'll be back with the news updates for the hour and Tech Central later on.